Gemini Notebook, formerly NotebookLM, has become one of the most powerful free AI tools you can use. But Google has packed so much into it that it's actually gotten pretty difficult to know where to start and how to get the most out of it. The newest version can do deeper research, analyze your own data, create PowerPoints and Excel files right from the chat, and turn those same sources into podcasts, videos, infographics, and more. That's a lot. And when you first open Gemini Notebook, it's not always obvious which features matter or how they all fit together. So this video will be a complete course on how to use Gemini Notebook. My goal is to show you every single feature inside of Gemini Notebook and to walk you step by step from how to get started with it as a complete beginner to how to use its most advanced capabilities. This is going to be a longer video, so feel free to skip around using the timestamps down below. But let's jump in now and I'll show you how to master everything you get with Gemini Notebook. To get started, go to notebooklm.google.com. This is included with your Google account, so as long as you open it in the same browser you use for Gmail or Gemini, it should open right up under that account. This is the main dashboard. This is where you'll find all of your notebooks you've already created. If you're brand new to this, you won't have any notebooks yet, except for the ones up here that are supplied by Google. Here you can see a notebook I recently created. Let me show you what this looks like, a completed notebook, so you know where we're headed with this. I can click on this notebook to open it up. This is a single notebook. Up here at the top, we have the title of the notebook, and here is a brief description of it. This is a notebook all about how to start a garden in Colorado. Each notebook is broken up into 3 columns. The column on the left are all of the sources. This is what makes up the knowledge base for the notebook. What makes Gemini Notebook so unique is that all of the AI knowledge that is used when you are chatting with the notebook or creating things with the notebook are grounded in the sources that you provide. Here are all the sources for this notebook. So what that means is as I use the AI, it only pulls in information from these sources and from nowhere else. That's what grounded means. So this is really helpful for situations where you want an AI to only know certain information. As for the sources themselves, these can be websites, YouTube videos, anything from Google Drive, or you can even paste in some text. Over here in the middle column, we have the AI chat. This is where you can ask the AI questions about the information in these sources. If you ever use ChatGPT or Gemini, it's very similar, but instead of pulling information from its own training or from the web, it's only using the information from the sources that you provided. And then over here on the right is Studio. This is where you can create things with Gemini Notebook. For instance, you can create audio overviews, slide decks, video overviews, reports, flashcards, infographics, and data tables. Let me show you what some of those look like. So right here, we have an infographic that was created. It pulled in the information from those sources and created for us an infographic based on that information. Here is a slide deck. It goes through how to start gardening in Colorado. And here's an example of one of the videos you can make with Gemini Notebook.
These conditions, you can yield massive, healthy tomato plants. Survival here relies on building.
So there's a lot you can do with Gemini Notebook. But before you feel overwhelmed, let's start easy. I'll click on the top left here to return back to my dashboard, and let's start a new notebook together. To do that, you want to click right here where it says Create New Notebook. Each notebook is basically its own separate workspace for one topic or project. And the first thing it'll ask you to do when you create a notebook is to add in the sources. These are simply the information you want the notebook to use as its source of truth. And there's a lot of options for what you choose as a source. You can upload files, add links to websites or YouTube videos, add things for Drive, or even paste in text. Here, for instance, I have an article on this website that's all about how to garden in Colorado, so I'm going to grab this. All you have to do is copy down the URL, come over to Gemini Notebook, and click on this button right here that says Websites. And you can paste in that link, and as long as you separate it with a space, you can add some more. So for instance, right here, there are some YouTube videos I want to add. I will right click on these dots and click on share to get a link to this YouTube video. And then I can paste that one in there. So that's my second source. Let's add another YouTube video. I will copy down this link and paste that one in. And you can do this with several other websites as well. We'll just use these three. And then I'll click on insert. And you'll notice that over here on the left, those are now being loaded in. Now you can always add more sources after that initial setup by clicking right here where it says add sources. And this time I'm going to upload a file because I have one on my computer that's all about local vegetables. There it is. So I will select that one, click on open, and now you'll see that one's being added. Now, if you're completely at a loss as to where to start because you don't have any sources, then that is when you want to use the research tool. So right here on the left, you'll see that there's an option to either do fast research or deep research. And this can find information and sources from the web to bring them into the notebook as sources. I will use fast research for this one, and I will type in here what I'm going to use this notebook for, what the topic of the notebook is, which is gardening in Colorado. And if I click on search there, you can see that it found these websites. Now, if you click right here where it says 7 more sources, it's going to be different depending on how many sources it found for you. You can see the names of all the websites, and you can actually click on them to open them to see if they are sources that you want to use. Here, actually, I already had one of those in there coincidentally, but this one's new and this one's new. And as long as you're happy with them, you can check off the ones you want to bring in as sources and then click on import. And you'll see all of those are now being added here on the left. It is important that you're careful about what sources you add to your notebooks because the notebooks are grounded in that information. So only use reputable websites and websites that you trust. Over here now, you see all of them are added, but 2 of them are highlighted in red. And that's because Gemini Notebook can't use every website as a source. Some are behind a paywall, or there's other reasons they can't be added. Whenever that happens, instead of trying to fight it, usually the best thing to do is just to click on more here and click on remove all failed sources. That will then delete all the sources that weren't able to be uploaded and only keep the ones that actually worked. As time goes on, your list of sources is going to grow and grow and grow, and it can at times become a little bit unwieldy. And that's when you want to use the auto label feature. You can find that right here. And if you click on this, that will use AI to automatically group your sources together. So you can see right here, we have a section now for fruit cultivation, a section for general gardening, and a section for soil and pests. And do note that one source can be inside multiple of these labels if multiple labels apply to the same source. But this is a nice way just to keep it all nice and organized. If you need to make any changes, you can open up the label, click on these 3 dots and either remove the source entirely from your notebook, rename it, or give it a different label. With our sources now dialed in, let's look at what was automatically set up for us. Up here at the top, you'll notice that it automatically created a title for this notebook. Here's a name, Cultivating Success, A Guide to Colorado Vegetable Gardening. I think that title is okay, it's certainly clever, but I don't think it's that great for when I'm quickly glancing at the dashboard and want to easily find this notebook. So I'm going to rename it. You can easily do that just by highlighting the text up here and typing in a new name. So I will call this one Vegetable Gardening in Colorado. And it also updates the title here as well. Under that, we have a summary of the information in this notebook. To customize any of this, you can click on this button right here that says Customize. This is another spot where you can change the title, and you can also set a custom notebook summary that will replace this summary right here. So if we click again on Customize, I can toggle that on and just say something simple like, this notebook is all about how to create a vegetable garden in Colorado. And if I click on Done, you'll see that the summary here has now been updated to that much shorter summary. Opening Customize back up, you'll see up here is a place where you can upload an image. If we return back to my NotebookLM dashboard, you'll see the notebook right here that we just started, and this is the one that I showed you earlier. And if you'll notice, there's a nice image here, so it's easier to find. So if you want to create a background image like that, you can do that inside the Customize section. What I usually do is go over to Gemini and ask it to create an image for me. I then download that image by clicking right here, and then returning back to Gemini Notebook, I can click on Upload and select that image. There we go. Now clicking on Done, you'll see that image back here, and it makes it a lot nicer, especially on the dashboard. It makes it easier to find this notebook in the future. Let's go back into it though. I think we are done setting up the notebook and we can start using it. The two sections for using the notebook are the middle column and the column on the right. We'll start with the middle one. This is the chat. This is where you can chat with the AI that has access to all of the knowledge you have in your sources. So it's very similar to using Gemini directly, except it is locked in and only using these sources as its knowledge base. So here, for instance, I can ask it a simple question like, what are the best type of vegetables to grow in Colorado for beginners? And then here's the answer. It says Colorado's sunshine makes it fantastic for gardening, but the climate can be quite dry, which creates some difficulties. So in the warm seasons, you want to grow tomatoes and peppers, and in the cooler seasons, you can grow radishes, lettuce, beets, peas, and cabbage. And it gives some beginner tips. Of course, you can then ask some follow-up questions. So, okay, let's say I only want to grow one to get started, which would be the easiest. And here you can see it gave me a new response and narrowed down the list for me to radishes and tells me why radishes are one of the easiest to grow. If at any point you're stuck and you're not quite sure what to ask, Gemini Notebook always gives you suggestions right here as for prompts you can start with or prompts you can follow up with. And you can click on any of these and it will automatically send it. As you're working inside chat, what I want you to notice is right here, it tells you how many sources are being used to answer your query. And you can change this by coming over to the sources here on the left and unselecting any sources that you don't want the chat to use when answering your question. So let's say, for instance, I'm looking at all of these sources and I start asking some questions and I decide that I just want to use one of these as the source of truth for this notebook, at least temporarily. What I can do is click on this button, which will unselect all of the sources. And then I'll select this one YouTube video that I want to use as my source of truth. Coming over here to the chat now, you'll see there's only one source listed. So if I ask a question now, it's not going to use all of these sources, it's just going to use that single one. And of course, you can do that with as many or as few sources as you want. To further refine the responses you get from the chat, you can come to the top of the chat and click on this button right here that has these three lines, and you can configure the chat. So first, you can define the conversational goal, style, or role. You could have the default one, which is best for general purpose research and brainstorming tasks. Or if you're using this notebook to learn about something, you can turn on Learning Guide, or you can give it custom instructions. I usually leave it on default most of the time. You can also choose your response length. You can keep it at default, longer, or shorter. And honestly, when I remember to do it, I usually switch it over to shorter because I find that Gemini Notebook tends to give longer responses than I need. So I will select shorter and click on save. There is more you can do with chat and we will return to it in a few moments, but I first want to show you what you can do inside of Studio over here on the right. Before we get to that though, I have a quick favor to ask you. I release all of my AI courses for free on YouTube because I don't think that learning how to use AI should be locked behind a paywall. If you appreciate that, all I ask is that you give this video a thumbs up and let me know that you appreciate it in the comment section down below. I still read and respond to every single comment myself, and it's what motivates me to keep making this content. If you leave a comment, I would really appreciate it. Now, let's talk about Studio. Studio is my favorite part of Gemini Notebook and is arguably the most fun part about Gemini Notebook. You can use this to generate these different kinds of assets. There are currently 9 of them, and there may be more by the time you're watching this video. We have audio overviews, which are essentially audio files of podcasts that were generated with AI. We have slide decks, which are like PowerPoints, video overviews, mind maps, reports, flashcards, quizzes, infographics, and data tables. So let me first show you audio overview. To create any of these assets, all you have to do is click on the card, and that will open up the customize menu. For the audio overviews, there are 4 different formats. The first is a deep dive, which is a lively conversation between 2 different hosts. The second is called brief, and that's a shorter overview about the concept and the core ideas of your notebook. Then we have critique, where an expert reviews the sources and offers constructive feedback. And then we have debate, where the 2 different hosts will talk against each other and have a debate about a topic concerning your notebook. We're just going to stick with deep dive for this one. You can then choose the language and the length, short, default, or long. And then you can choose which sources you want to be used in the creation process for this asset, which in this case is the audio overview. So you can select all of them, or you can just select some of them. And then finally, you can tell the AI hosts what to focus on in this episode. You can either leave this blank and just leave it up to the AI, or you can type in a response or use one of these suggestions. So I will select this one that says planning the layout for the garden. Once you have everything selected, you can click on generate. And then you'll see right here that it's starting that generation. Some of these assets, like the audio overviews and the video overviews, do take a little bit longer to generate, so you have to be a little bit patient. So while we're waiting for that, we will move on and generate a slide deck. I'll click on slide deck here, and that will open up the customize slide deck menu. There are 2 formats here, a detail deck and a presenter deck. To give you an idea of the difference, let me come back to the other notebook I had started before. And right here, this is a detailed deck. So it has all of the information in it. You see there's a lot of images, but there's also a lot of text in here as well. This is really nice when you just need to send it to someone because it stands on its own. You don't need someone talking, like giving a presentation here. All the information is in the slides. But if we look at a presenter deck, which is what we have right here, this one's a lot more sparse. You need someone who's actually explaining what's going on, and there's information that's intentionally left out so that the presenter can talk about the information while using this as a presentation. So that's really the difference between a detailed deck and presenter slide. So use whichever one that you want. Again, you'll see the same choice for different lengths, short, default, or long, and then sources. I should also spend this moment to clarify one point. There are going to be some features that I have in my Gemini Notebook account that you're not going to have, and that depends on the pricing plan. You can use Gemini Notebook completely for free, but some capabilities will only be unlocked with a paid subscription. So you may not see these unless you have a pro or even an ultra subscription. Just keep that in mind. Once again, you can select how many sources and which sources you want to use, or oops, I accidentally closed it. Let me open it back up. And you can, of course, describe what you want the slide deck to be about. So in this case, I might say all of the vegetables that thrive in Colorado. And then I'll click on generate for that one, and that will start working. So now we have 2 generations running, and we can try a third one. So for this one, we're going to do the video overview. Clicking on this, we have the menu that now pops up, and you'll see we have 3 different choices here: cinematic videos, explainer, and shorts. And this is one of those cases where you may not see cinematic videos because you're not on one of the paid plans. But I will show you what all 3 of these types of videos look like. So this is a cinematic video, and you'll notice as I play this, it's really rich in its imagery. It uses Gemini behind the scenes to plan out the video before it's generated. So it has a whole story arc to it, and all the images and videos that are used are planned out along with that. So it really comes together quite nicely.
Face intense UV radiation, heavy clay, short growing windows, and sudden severe within our short frost-free window. Looking at this anatomical diagram, you can see the difference. On the left, a healthy plant has a thick main stem and dense, bright roots. On the right, a compromised plant is root-bound.
So quite nice. They are very impressive. The second type are the explainer videos. So here's an example of that one.
Let's jump right into this explainer and demystify defending your hard-earned harvest and finally joining the local gardening community. We're going to make sure you conquer this rugged terrain without making those classic rookie mistakes. You know, the sheer scale of our, battle.
So these are more like a PowerPoint presentation with an AI voiceover over the top. They're really nice, just maybe not as rich as those cinematic ones. And then finally, we have the shorts. Here's an example of that one right here.
Just root in the stem actually work. A larger root mass absorbs more water, which prevents drought stress and stops your fruit from cracking. Take a standard 10-inch tomato transplant sitting in a small nursery pot.
So obviously that's better for something like Instagram or a YouTube short. But honestly, I sometimes love the way the shorts come out better than the other two. It's just really, whatever is going on behind the scenes is really, really done well. So anyway, returning back to the notebook we're using together, you can choose whichever one you want to use. And for the explainer one, because they are like basically a PowerPoint, you can choose the style of that PowerPoint, that slide deck. You have all those choices right here. So if you wanted to do for like a retro paint style, you can choose that, or watercolor, whichever one you want. And again, I'm not going to walk you through the same settings where you can choose the sources, a language, or the topic, but you'll fill all those in and then click on generate. Next, we will look at mind maps. These you can find right here. And there's not much to mind maps, not a lot of settings to change. Of course, you can give it the topic, and this is what they look like. It's a way to basically structure and visually see the information from your notebook. I admittedly don't use these that much, but I think there are some fans of it. So if you want to generate those, you can do that right here. And then we have reports. Reports are text reports, and there's a few different options here. You can create your own. You can create a brief document or briefing document, which is an overview of your sources, a study guide, or a blog post. Here's an example of what one of those looks like. For this one, I chose blog posts. So it just takes all the information in the sources and creates for you a blog post. And next we have flashcards. Flashcards are great for students. I see a lot of students using Gemini Notebook because you can create a new notebook for each of your classes or even the subjects in your classes, and then use things like the flashcards and the quizzes, which I'll show you next, to learn that information. Opening up flashcards, you can see you can choose between a shorter deck of flashcards, standard, or a longer deck, and the level of difficulty, and again, the sources, and you can really be specific about what topic you want for that set of flashcards. And because with these studio assets, you can generate them more than once, you can create multiple decks for each topic that you're studying. And to give you an idea of what those flashcards look like, here's one of the decks. You'll get the question, and then you can mentally answer it. Click on the card and it will reveal the answer. If you need a further explanation, you can click on explain, and then the chat will explain why that answer is correct and give you some more information. If you got it right, you can click on the green check mark, and if you get it wrong, you can click on the red X, and it'll keep track of your progress as you move along. If you're reading one of these flashcards and you don't like it for some reason, you can click on these three dots and delete it or edit it, or you can even add new flashcards in here. You can also shuffle the set or restart it. So we've already answered two of them. I can click on restart. That restarts the whole thing. After you're done, it will give you a score. It'll tell you how many you got right and how many you missed. And you can click on see full report to see all the topics that were covered and where you are struggling. And you can generate flashcards from within here based on any of these topics that you struggled with. So it says I didn't do very well with mountain soil chemistry, so I select that one, click on generate flashcards, and it will make sure that this new deck is specific to that topic that I was having some issues with. So that is flashcards, really helpful for learning, as are quizzes. Quizzes are, I think, are pretty self-explanatory. That's where it just asks you questions about the topic. So here's what one of those looks like. The question, we get multiple choices. You can select and you'll see if you got it right or wrong. And again, there's an explain button. You can click on these dots to delete any of them. So very similar to what we saw with flashcards, and it will give you a score at the end. Moving along, we also have infographics, another one of my favorite features inside of Studio. These will generate images for you, but unlike most images that are generated with AI, these aren't hyper-realistic images. These are images with the specific purpose of conveying information. That's what an infographic is. As an example, here is what an infographic looks like. You see, it usually has a title at the top, along with a lot of text that explains information to you. What's great about Gemini Notebook is that it gives you all these different really nice looking visual styles that you can choose between. And this makes these generations not only fun, but also keeps them very engaging. I really encourage you to spend some time generating infographics in all these different styles to see which ones you like the best. Personally, I really like sketch notes, and I'll admit, I also really like Kawaii quite a bit. So for this one, I will select Kawaii. Up here at the top, you can choose the orientation, landscape, portrait, or square. Landscape is 16 by 9. That's what you're watching right now. Portrait is 9 by 16. That's the aspect ratio of a phone, for instance. And square is obviously a square. I'll choose a landscape for this one. Down here, you can choose the level of detail. Standard is standard. It's what I showed you right here in terms of the amount of information in the infographic. Concise will have less information, and then detailed puts a lot more information in there. Detailed may not be available on your plan. Personally, I don't love using detailed. I find it tries to squish way too much information inside of one infographic. So I usually do standard or concise. Then you can choose the sources, describe what the infographic will have in it, and then click on generate. And finally, we have data tables. Data tables look like this. They're basically Excel files that have different columns and rows of information. And so you can come in here and say what you want the data table to be about. So for instance, I could say a data table that details the best time of the year to plant different vegetables, and it will create that one for me. So now we've run through all of those, and you see that some of them are done generating over here. So let's take a look at what we can now do inside of this section. So first, we can open up any of our assets. So this one right here is our audio overview. Let's give that one a quick listen. I'll click right here where it says play.
Slowly suffocating them.
I mean, it sounds a little dramatic, but it is actually true.
Right.
Now, in my opinion, the best way to listen to these audio overviews is to download the Gemini Notebook app on your phone and to listen to them while you're walking at the gym or while you're driving, the same way you would listen to any other podcast. One other really cool feature of these is there's the option to actually interrupt the podcast. It's called interactive mode. So if instead of pressing play, you click on this hand that's waving, you'll notice it will play the podcast, but you can actually interact with it. It's pretty wild. Let me show you how it works. With this open, I now click on play audio.
Welcome to the deep dive. What if I told you that just simply walking next to your tomato plant? Hey there. Want to share your thoughts on this?
I don't believe that. Just walking next to them can hurt my tomato plants. That sounds like that's not true.
It definitely sounds like I'm exaggerating, feeling every step.
It's like you're slowly...
So it's like an interactive podcast. It's pretty cool. So those are the two things you can do, either just regularly play it or have that interactive mode. There's also these three dots right here. And this is going to be true for everything that you generate inside of Studio. This will give you the option of sharing it. You can also rename it to easily find it later or download it. So that in this case, it will download it as an MP3 file, I believe. And you can view this prompt and sources. So if you've used a custom prompt and you want to check what it is to use it again or make some changes to that, you can do that by clicking on this. And this will show you what the prompt is right here, as well as which sources were used. And if you want, you can click on this button and that will iterate on this prompt, meaning it will automatically open up the prompt box and fill it in. And then you can just make any changes that you want to have a similar podcast just with those small changes. And then finally, you could also delete it. So if we look at the next one, this one is our slide deck. And you can see what that looks like right here. Now, slide decks has something unique that you don't see for the other assets you create in Studio. You can actually revise your slide decks. If you click up here where it says revise, you can tell it what changes you want to make to each slide. So let's say this title slide right here, I don't love something, like maybe just a text. I can just describe those changes. In this case, I'll say, I don't like the green, make it blue instead. I actually do like the green, but we'll just do that for this example. And then I will click on the next slide, and this one's okay, so I'm not gonna ask for any changes here. This one's okay, so I won't ask for any changes. This one, I can say, I don't like the word crop roster, or the words crop roster at the top, remove those. So once you've typed out all the changes you want to make, click on Generate Revised Deck, and then it will generate a new slide deck with those changes. While that's waiting, I'll open up the old slide deck, and I want to show you something else in here, which is this play button right here. That will start a slideshow that's full screen. And then to exit, you could just press the escape key. Now, I showed you before those 3 dots. You get a little bit more with slideshows or slide decks. In addition to the other options, there's also options for, again, clicking on slideshow or revise, but you can also download in different formats. So there's 2 different formats you can download into, a PDF or a PowerPoint. And you'll notice that with a few of the other assets you generate, like for data tables, you can download those to Sheets or export to Sheets, which is directly inside of Google Drive, like Google Sheets. So let me just show you. Clicking on that, you can see it's exporting, and then it opens it up inside of Google Sheets for you right here. And so each of them is going to be a little bit different in terms of what export options are available. Frustratingly, if we take a look at this infographic, and remember, this is the Kwai style, just to give you an idea of what that looks like. Frustratingly, you cannot revise a infographic like you can a slide deck. I'm sure that capability is coming soon because it seems like it should be exactly the same, but we don't yet have that available. One final thing I'll show you inside of Studio. Down here is the option to add a note. Clicking on this, you can type out any note that you want. This is helpful if you want to take notes as you are learning something. You can just take down those notes right here, and then it will automatically save. You just collapse it, and you'll see your note here. Okay, at this point, I think you have mastered the basics on how to use Gemini Notebook. I want to show you some more advanced capabilities though. For that, I want to start a new notebook. So we'll click on the top left here to return back to the Gemini Notebook dashboard. Before we create that notebook though, I want to show you a little bit more about how to organize and navigate this dashboard. So up here at the top are what are called featured notebooks. These are ones that have been created by Google Gemini. I honestly usually ignore those ones. Down here, you have your recent notebooks. These will be sorted so that the notebook that you last used will appear at the top. You'll notice that for all these notebooks, there are these 3 little dots here. It can be harder to see when you have the images, but they are there. So clicking on that, you can delete these notebooks, you can edit the title, you can add them to a collection, or you can pin them. So if I click on pin to top, you'll see that it pinned to the top here, so it's easier to find. Along the top here, there are some sorting options. So we have all selected by default. That shows you all of the notebooks, both yours and the ones that were created by Google. My notebooks will only show you your notebooks. Featured notebooks will only show you the ones that were created by Google. And you can also share notebooks. So if anyone shares a notebook with you, that will appear here. Finally, we have collections. Collections are how you can organize your notebooks. So we'll start a new collection here, and I'll call this one Home. I'm going to use this for any topics I'm studying about, how to make my house and my life more homey. So I selected that one, and then down here I can choose which notebooks I want to add to this collection. So here I have a notebook about how to bake chocolate chip cookies. I'll throw that one in there. And how to sleep better, I will choose that one in there. And then I'll select my one about gardening and then click on create. So now here's my home collection. If I click on that, I see the 3 notebooks in here. Notebooks can exist in multiple collections, by the way. So if I go backwards and start a new collection and maybe call this one outdoors or something, I can choose that same gardening notebook and it can exist in multiple collections. Let me return back now to the All Notebooks section. I don't need this one pinned, so I'll click on these three dots and unpin it so I can see it back down here. Up here at the top, you can switch between this grid view to this list view. I prefer the grid view, and you can choose how they're sorted, most recent, or you can sort by title. I think most recent makes more sense to me. And then there's also a search button right here. So if you're having trouble finding one of your notebooks, you can just use this search function right here. All right, so for the dashboard, that's everything you need to know. Let me now move on and show you some of those more advanced capabilities. For this, we will create a new notebook, of course, by clicking right here where it says create new notebook. For this notebook, instead of uploading the same types of sources I showed you before, different websites and such, I'm going to do something a little bit differently because this notebook I'm going to use as a way to analyze different data and information I have. It's more of a personalized notebook. So what I have on my computer is this folder right here that contains all of these files that I'm using to keep track of my family's budget. So we have my 2023, 2024, and 2025 family expenses. We have my financial goals as well, and a file here with some trips I have planned for my family. In addition to that, I have this Google Doc that also has my family trips in here. And this is something I share with other members of my family so we can keep this updated as we think of new trip ideas. So I want all of that brought in to this notebook. So I can choose upload files here, find the files I want to upload and select all of them, then open those. So now those are being loaded in. We also have to add that Google Doc. So I'll click on add source and I will select drive here. And I'll select that file, which is called travel ideas, and click on insert. What's really neat about adding something from Google Drive is that that will stay updated. So if myself or another member of my family changes this file, that will automatically be reflected inside the notebook. So I don't have to refresh it or delete it and then add it again. Now we will come over to the chat in the middle because I want to show you some of the newer features of Gemini Notebook. Under the hood, Google has added a lot more capabilities to Gemini Notebook, a lot more powerful models, and each notebook also has its own private cloud computer running, which allows it to do agentic work for you. That sounds like a mouthful, but all that means is that it can do more and it can analyze more information and more data. So here, for instance, we have all of these expenses from the past 3 years. I'm going to ask it to summarize all of that information. Create a PNG file that has a pie chart that summarizes how my family spends money broken up into different categories. I should really say broken down into different categories. For this one, I don't need it to have access to all the files, only the ones with my expenses, so I've only selected those 3. So this new capability allows you to create all these different file types directly from the chat. Here I'm demonstrating how it creates a PNG file, but you can also use this to create Word documents, PDFs, Excel documents, PowerPoints, all of that. All right, check that out. You can now see the PNG file over here on the right, and it's kind of walking through exactly what it found. So let's just open this up instead, and you can see that breakdown right here. So notice how I'm using notebooks 2 different ways. One is for learning, where I'm pulling information from the web. And then we have notebooks like this, where I'm analyzing, and it's analyzing my information, my data. So we can create another one in here. So I can say something like, create a Word document that contains a breakdown of this same info. And this is what it looks like. So we have this sort of title page here. And then you can see it's quite a comprehensive report, really nicely put together. Another thing you can always do inside the chat for any of the responses that you get, even if you're not using it to create assets like we just did, you can click right here where it says save to note. And that will save the response as a note over here on the right if you want. Now, with this new functionality, you can also search for sources using the chat. What I'll do now is turn on all of my existing sources. So we are now using all of them. And I will ask it, I want to budget better with my family. Can you find some reputable sources that can help with that? And now it will look at the sources I already have and all the information in here and find new sources from the web that would actually be helpful for my situation. So here it looked at my sources and it says your sources outline your family's specific financial goals, including prioritized goals. And you need to have a monthly savings sequence and internal house rules. Would you like me to do some web research to find highly recommended, reputable external sources? And I'll say, yes, please do that. So this is different from using the research tool right here, like I showed you before, because this one doesn't take into consideration the sources you already have or the things you've already chatted about. But this search tool is looking at the full picture when it's going out and finding and doing research for you. This can also be helpful in the other notebook I showed you before that we started together, the one about gardening. Because this one, I could ask it, for instance, look at all the sources. Is there anything that I'm missing? And if there is, can you find some sources to fill in those gaps? And it's really good at doing that as well. But returning back to our new financial family planning notebook, you can see here that it went out, did the research, and it found some things for us and actually broke it down into these different key themes. And here are the sources that it recommends importing. So if you want to import these, you can now click on import and those will be added here on the left. Since this is a family financial report notebook, I want to share this with other members of my family. To do that, you can click on the top right here where it says share, and you can put in the other user's email address and they will have access to this notebook. You can change the access settings. So with this, it can be anyone with that you put in here. That's what restricted means. Or you can change it to anyone with the link, or you can make it public. Notebooks that you create inside of Gemini Notebook don't just exist inside of Gemini Notebook. You can also access them to some degree inside of Gemini directly. So here I've come over to gemini.google.com. This is Google Gemini. If you open up the sidebar, you'll see right here, notebooks. And if I click on all notebooks, you can see all of my Gemini Notebook notebooks. And here's the one that we created together about gardening. Here's the one with the family financial records. Let's look at the gardening one. I'll click on that and you'll see right here the name of the notebook, and I can see all the sources right here. I can even add new sources directly from Gemini. Closing this out, you'll then see the Gemini chat. This is very similar to how regular Gemini chat works, but it's going to have access to all of these sources and it's going to prioritize these sources when answering your questions. So if I were to ask the same question with regular Gemini chat or with Gemini chat inside the notebook, I'm going to get slightly different answers. If you click on the three dots on the top right, you can find your notebook settings. There's not much in here, but what I want to point out is that you can use notebook memory. With this toggled on, then anytime you start a chat from within this notebook, it will remember the prior chats from this notebook. Let me start a few chats and show you an example. So I'll ask it, can I grow any fruit in Colorado? So here's the answer that it's giving me. And now if I return back to that notebook, which you can see right here, then down here we can see the past chats and you see that chat that I just started. So inside of Gemini, notebooks are in part a folder system. It will organize all of your chats to keep them nice and tidy, and you'll know and be able to return back to them pretty easily. Another interesting feature about this is that if we now return back to Gemini Notebook and I come over to that notebook, you'll now see as a source on the side the chats from Gemini. And if I open this up, I can see all the chats that I started in Gemini. In this case, it's only one. So it goes both way. Gemini can pull the information from Gemini Notebook, and Gemini Notebook can pull the chats from Gemini as long as it was started from within the notebook in Gemini. So that is literally everything you can do with Gemini Notebook. You now know how to create notebooks, fill them with the right sources, create infographics, slide decks, and audio overviews, and how to use its more advanced capabilities. If you made it this far, I'm willing to bet that you got some value out of this video. If you did, again, the best way to show your appreciation is to give this video a thumbs up and to leave a comment. But if you're not done learning about how to use AI, then check out this video right here. This is my in-depth course on how to master Google Gemini. If you want to learn all my best tips for Google Gemini, click on this video right here, and I'll see you over there in 1 second. Bye for now.